Every car you see on the road today is a ghost of a much more ambitious past. We live in an era of homogenization where every crossover and sedan looks like it was shaped by the same wind tunnel and the same group of insurance adjusters. But if you look back just a few decades, you'll find a landscape of experimental technology that feels like science fiction. Tonight, we are performing a forensic autopsy on the features that the government, the lawyers, and the bean counters officially deleted. In 1956, Chrysler teamed up with CBS Labs to solve a problem that seems unthinkable today. The radio was boring, and there was no way to choose your own music. The result was the Highway Hi-Fi. It was a $200 option, which, adjusted for inflation, is nearly $2,000 today. The inventor was a man named Peter Goldmark. He was the same genius who invented the long play LP record for Columbia. But Goldmark faced a forensic challenge. How do you keep a needle in a groove while a car is hitting potholes in 1950s Detroit? Goldmark couldn't use standard 45s. He created a specialized ultra micro groove record that spun at 16 and 2/3 RPM, exactly half the speed of a standard vinyl. This allowed for 45 minutes of music per side. But to stop the needle from skipping, he had to violate the laws of vinyl preservation. A home record player used a tracking force of about 0.5 to 1 gram. The Highway Hi-Fi, it slammed the needle down with over 2 full grams of pressure. It was essentially a mechanical lathe. It didn't just play the record, it carved the high frequencies right out of the vinyl. After just a dozen plays, the records were physically destroyed. Chrysler faced a mountain of warranty claims for ruined music and jammed motors. By 1959, the dream of the dashboard turntable was dead. It was a mechanical masterpiece that was technically a record shredder. In 1986, long before the iPad or Tesla, Buick launched the Graphic Control Center, GCC, in the Riviera. It was a 9-inch CRT cathode ray tube touch screen, literally a small TV built into your dash that controlled the radio and climate. It was 40 years ahead of its time, but it was a forensic nightmare. Because it was a CRT screen, it was incredibly bright at night, ruining the driver's night vision. Unlike modern screens, this used a green phosphor display that would burn in. If you left the radio on the same station, that station's name would be permanently etched into the glass. Customer complaints about distracted driving and the sheer cost of repairing a vacuum tube in a dashboard led Buick to delete it by 1990. The government eventually tightened distraction mandates, ensuring we didn't see another touchscreen for 20 years. For decades, the bench seat was the soul of the American car. It allowed for 3 people to sit up front, creating the 6-passenger sedan. While the driver and passenger eventually got shoulder belts, the middle passenger usually only had a lap belt. When the government mandated dual front airbags in the late 90s, they ran into a forensic wall. An airbag designed for a passenger could seriously injure a third person sitting in the middle. The final blow. To make a middle seat safe, you needed a seat-integrated belt. The belt built into the chair, which is too heavy and expensive for sedans. The bench seat wasn't banned, but the safety logistics made it impossible to keep. By the 2000s and 10s, it was officially deleted from almost every non-truck in America. In 1984, the US government issued a Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 208. This was a turning point in history. It mandated passive restraints, safety systems that worked without the driver having to lift a finger. Manufacturers were given a choice: install expensive, unproven airbags or find a cheaper way. Most chose the motorized seatbelt. If you grew up in the late 80s or 90s, you remember the sound, that high-pitched whir as the belt scurried along a track on the door frame. We called them mouse belts. But there was a forensic oversight that cost lives. Because the shoulder belt moved automatically, it created a false sense of security. Millions of drivers assumed they were strapped in and ignored the manual lap belt. The data: in a frontal collision, the shoulder belt would hold the upper torso, but without the lap belt, the lower body would slide forward and under the dashboard, a process engineers call submarining. The results were catastrophic: internal abdominal trauma, liver lacerations, and spinal injuries. The government eventually realized that by making belts automatic, they had made them more lethal. When the 1998 mandate for dual front airbags hit, the mouse belt was legally and physically executed. Pop-up headlights defined the cool era. From the Lamborghini Countach to the Mazda Miata, they were the ultimate automotive wink, but they didn't die because they were unreliable. They were targeted by European ECE Regulation 48. In the early 2000s, safety regulators began focusing on pedestrian protection. They analyzed thousands of accidents and realized that a sloping car hood acts like a ramp. It allows a human body to roll over the car, absorbing energy. Now, imagine that same car with pop-up headlights up. Those vertical, rigid headlight housings acted like localized battering rams. They created sharp, square impact points that caused severe, concentrated trauma to the legs and hips of pedestrians. At the same time, high-intensity discharge, HID, and LED technology matured. We no longer needed massive 7-inch glass-sealed beams that required a hidden door. We could finally fit powerful projectors into a tiny slit in the bumper. The 2004 Corvette C5 was the final legal holdout. Once that production line stopped, the pop-up was deleted from history. They are officially known as coach doors, but the world knows them by a much darker name: suicide doors. In the early 20th century, they were the height of luxury, allowing women in long dresses to step out of a car gracefully. The name suicide didn't come from a marketing department, it came from the morgue. On a standard front-hinged door, the wind at highway speeds pushes the door shut. On a rear-hinged door, the wind acts like a vacuum. Before modern safety latches, if a rear door unlatched at 50 miles per hour, the aerodynamic drag would catch the door and rip it wide open, often pulling the passenger out with it. In an era before seatbelts, you were one loose latch away from being ejected into the road. The government didn't ban them, but they made the interlock requirements so expensive that most brands quit. To be legal today, the front door must physically overlap the rear door, or there must be a complex electronic deadbolt system that prevents opening above 2 miles per hour. Only Rolls-Royce and a few ultra-luxury concepts can afford the suicide price tag today. When we look at these features, we see more than just old tech. We see the forensic fingerprints of a world moving from unregulated innovation to litigated survival. Every time a feature is deleted, it's a sign that our priorities have shifted. We traded the charm of a pop-up headlight for the safety of a pedestrian. We are on a mission to hit 2,000 subscribers to bring you more of these forbidden files of automotive history. Which deleted feature would you bring back if you could rewrite the law? I'm reading every comment. I'll see you in the next investigation.